Welcome to another episode of the Swords and Sports Podcast, one man's journey to read 52 fantasy books in 52 weeks and create 52 podcasts documenting the experience. I'm your host, Mike Mokes, and this week I'm joined by an absolute superstar of the genre, Nick Martell. He's here to talk about his amazing book, The Kingdom of Liars. So, funny thing about Nick, first off, this interview, as always, is coming up after the book details, and I actually have a few announcements, so if you want to skip those because I hate doing them, skip right to the interview. If you want to know what's going on in the swords and sports world, listen on ahead. But I will say this about Nick. He went from being interviewed by Brandon Sanderson himself, the king, to being interviewed by me. That is literally like playing LeBron James to playing like a 5th grade basketball superstar. So that's what I think this podcast is on the level of, a 5th grade all-state basketball player. Nick was awesome. If you're wondering why we're wearing suits, I did this interview a while ago, and that's when I had the tux. I think I told that story maybe like 3 episodes ago. So I was like, bro, like, I had this tux, I was going to wear it as a joke. He's like, I'll grab a suit. And I don't think we talk about why we're doing it in the interview, but he's fucking game for anything. He's amazing. He's basically living the dream life of what, if I was like 14 and they were like, what do you want to do? I'd be like college athlete, fantasy writer. And he went out and actually did those things. Incredible. And I can't wait for everybody to listen to that. Other self-promo stuff. This podcast is on all your podcast listening platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcast Thingy, and the YouTube channel, which I'm trying to build out. As a huge thank you, I want to thank everybody, especially Justine from Whispers and Wonders. Incredible blog website. Go check that out. She also does the Storytellers on Tour. I think she puts those together, and those are awesome. They're a huge part of the research that I do for these episodes, and it's other content creators that really help, bring out the best in my content, and, I'm sure it helps out the authors and they love it. But shout out to everybody at the Self-Published Fantasy Month team. It was so cool to be asked to be a part of something. Sometimes when you're doing things and they're kind of, I don't have a lot of collaboration with other people, mostly like Twitter interaction. I could kind of feel like I'm on an island sometimes, so it was cool to be asked to be part of something and to get to participate in that. The interviews that I put up there, they're all on the website. They're all on, my pages and stuff like that. Go check those out. And check out those authors. I love self-published fantasy. It's been a huge part of this show, and I've really tried to highlight it as much as possible. And getting to be a part of that month was, special to me. And those authors were awesome. So shout out to them. For more details about upcoming episode stuff, follow the Twitter. If you want clips of the episodes, follow the Instagram. They're both at Swords and Sports. And last thing, I was about to, skip ahead of this. Now this intro is getting a little long. But shout out to Mahir over at Fantasy Book Critic. There's my first ever written interview is being posted over at fantasybookcritic.com. If you want to learn more about the roots of this show, or, hopefully you want a quick laugh, I hope that I provide that. I was trying to go for funny. I don't know if that comes across in the written word. I'm not a writer. Let's get into these book details. The book is The Kingdom of Liars. The author is superstar Nick Martell. Last time I said someone was going to be a superstar, it was Crystal Matar. Shout out to her for being a finalist in SPIFBO 7, probably the least surprising finalist of all time. When I said she was going to be a future superstar, I knew it. So I'm saying this guy's already a superstar, so count it. The series is The Legacy of the Mercenary Kings. This is book 1. There are 2 out. It was published on June 23rd, 2020. So we talked about this a little bit, but right in the height of pandemic. It is 596 pages in the most ambitious debut I've ever seen, and it is pulled off. The publisher is Gallery Saga Press, and the books in the series are The Kingdom of Liars and The Two-Faced Queen. This is the spoiler warning. This podcast interview contains spoilers for Nick Martell's The Kingdom of Liars. I'm going to say it again. This podcast contains massive spoilers for The Kingdom of Liars by Nick Martell. If you haven't read the book yet, what are you doing? Without further ado, an amazing author, Nick Martell. It's another week, and I am beyond excited to bring on the Earphones Award winner. That's a first time one, and a Book Nest Award finalist, the author of The Kingdom of Liars. It's book 1 of the Legacy of the Mercenary. He's Nick Martell. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I can't wait to talk.
Are you the first fantasy writer that's ever had a profile done in a fraternity magazine?
Yeah, I think so. Wow, you must have dug deep. I'm pretty sure I am. At least I know that fraternity, Teak. I'm pretty sure I am the first and only fantasy author they have ever interviewed. I think I have the magazine on my bookshelf. It was like a 2 or 3 page spread. It was fantastic. So
it's a surprisingly good spread.
Yeah, it's in depth. I remember when they initially interviewed me, like, do you have the covers or anything? We're gonna put a bunch of pictures in it. And I'm like, no, sorry, the covers aren't available yet. And they're like, it's fine, we'll figure it out. And sure enough, it's really impressive. Like,
does that go along with this theme you seem to have that nobody believes you're a fantasy author?
Yeah, pretty much, 100%. I always have to tell people, I'm like, yeah, I'm a fantasy author. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, yeah. Funnily enough, so this is kind of a segue, but it works. When I was in college, I was a creative writing major, and no one believed me. No one believed me I was a creative writing major. I'm like, yeah, I go write books. And they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, I am. You want me to show you my work? And they're like, well, I don't believe you. And just became this recurring thing where no one believed I was this dude who just wrote books. So
yeah, I mean, you're like Adam Peaty combined with Peaty combined with Animal House combined with Brando Sando. You're like an enigma.
I pretty much took the advice they give you when I go to college, where I was like, I'm just going to try to do everything. And I did. I can't swim anywhere nearly as fast as Peaty. I would be terrified to be in the lane next to him, but yeah, I tried to do everything and anything. So
just one of my questions was, if just there was another lane in those Olympic races and it was just like an average person, how far behind would they be?
So far. I'm a swimming nerd. Like, that's one of my nerdiest things. And I was trying to explain to my girlfriend how fast these swimmers are. She had seen me and she knew to percent. And then I'm like, no, you don't understand. These people, if I was in the lane next to them, and I'm a fairly decent breaststroker, they would be so far ahead. You know, when they kind of do the camera zoom and you no longer it would be split second. They'd be off their first pull, I'd be gone. I'd be off the screen forever. They're so fast. I would love it if they do it, but it would be so kind of soul crushing to whoever the person was, the ordinary person, just to show how fast these people really are.
Well, there is that story of that guy who was in the country of the equatorial circle or something, and he was just a fill-in as I guess they just pick some people from underprivileged countries, and he had no idea how to swim, and he's just
it happens, and I always it's crazy when it does. I remember during the triathlon, or not the triathlon, the marathon for the Olympics, they were saying, yeah, these people are running 3-minute miles, and you're just
incredible.
3 minutes? 3-minute miles? What? Oh, it's insane, the lengths these athleticism these people can get to. I'm just mind blown watching it.
Yeah, and especially when it's something you do, and you were a collegiate swimmer. It's not like you were a fucking kiddie pool splasher.
Yeah, and that's what the thing. I think once you realize how intricate these things are, I knew people who almost went to the Olympics, and they were telling me about the stuff they had to do, and it's crazy. And even just the people at my collegiate level, they were oh, they're going to NCAAs and things. And I'm they'd be talking about the D1 swimmers and be yeah, these Olympic swimmers are just blow us out of the water. And I'm seeing how fast these people are. It's insane, how the gap between some of the people just very strong swimmers and just the people who are going D1. It's crazy. And it's insane. That's why Michael Phelps blows my mind, because he's just an anomaly for so many different reasons. And he has, how many gold medals again? I don't even remember. It's
too many.
Yeah. at that point, it's just yeah, you're the best ever. Please just stop swimming for all of our sakes. Let us appear good swimmers again.
Right. I mean, it's some of these speed like race sports, and this is so off topic. This wasn't what I was planning on talking about it at all. But like I watch a football game and I'm like, I can make that throw. But I watch these racing. Sometimes at these big running conventions, they have like treadmills that go an elite marathoner's pace. And no one could stay on that treadmill for more than like 5 seconds. And you're like, this is for 26 miles. No way.
Yeah. And it's that kind of thing where like once you like you're like you can be like in shape, you can be good at your sport, and then you see the high level and you're just like, no, there's no way. Like even the people who are good at it still can't match that level.
Now, do you think most authors think that when they read your book, they're like, shit, I'll never reach that level?
I think it depends on who you ask. I think there's like many things. There's some people like, oh, he's great, and there's some people like, nah, he's terrible. It's the dichotomy of life. Some are good, some are bad.
Now, if you were given a profile of a person and it started out fraternity member, collegiate swimmer, and then the third thing was blank, how many options would you have to go down to get fantasy writer as the third one?
Probably a decent amount. Yeah, it's just it wasn't many things. I had a weird. I can't speak anymore. I started laughing so much. Yeah, I mean, it was like I was the guy. Like people didn't think I was the fantasy author, and it worked and helped. Did cool things because I got to see all these cool experiences. But also just I was in my room writing about dragons and stuff. So I got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, definitely. Also, just to kill the whole flow of this thing, do you think walking onto a swim team should be called swimming onto a swim team?
I think so, yeah.
We could end it after that. Okay, I had a random question. Does it seem convenient that when you're looking at the history of your ancestors that they happen to be French nobles?
I was something I learned when I was younger. My family is big into researching like our genealogy, and they're like these stories I could tell my grandfather in particular figured out about our family. It was crazy. And then one day they were like, yeah, we could trace our roots back to Charlemagne. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you want to hear the whole story? Like during the French Revolution, a bunch of our family members got their heads cut off, and the father and son escaped to like America on a boat. And I was just sitting there like, what? So it was something I grew up learning. It was one of those things about family history. They'd be telling me all these random stuff, and they're like, yeah, this is what happened, this or this. And I'd be like, okay. And then I'd tell it, be like, yeah, this is cool. And they'd be like, what?
How disappointing would it have been if it wasn't Charlemagne France, but Charlemagne the God?
Oh, it would be a little bit disappointing, not gonna lie. Like at least
For a guy who writes over 1,000-page books a year, do you think Brando Sando could have gave you more than 4 words for the blurb?
He did. It's the full blurb is like it's like 3 or 4 sentences, I think.
Well, that destroyed that question.
It's cool. It's like a lot of like the blurbs you see on books are actually much longer, but they reduce them down to like their best bits. It's
right.
I didn't know about it until I like started getting them. They'd be like, all right, here's the blurb. I'd be like, awesome. And they're like, that's not appearing on the book. And they're like, nope, just this single part is.
For everyone doesn't know, Nick is very modest. So he did an interview with Brandon Sanderson, and I had some questions about this interview.
Okay.
Is it the biggest power move to just continuously sign books while interviewing someone? Because how many books do you think he signed throughout that entire interview?
I think one of my friends, when they were watching it, tried to keep track, and they told me the number, but it's hundreds. It's easily hundreds.
It's so many that for most debut authors, that would trigger a reprint.
Yeah, it would. Like the amount of books he has around him in the signings and stuff is like more than some printings will get for any book. It's crazy.
Yeah, what a fucking power move that is. Just signing books in someone's face.
I love it. I find it I actively love it because it's just like, look, he's got to sign these books either way. He's going to interview people at the same time. It's great.
Yeah, it's multitasking. Only like 5 people could get away with that and have it not look tacky. Also, you guys share an agent, so you're not going to say anything about it. That's what I'm here for. That had to be a moment where you're like, holy shit, like this has come really far.
Yeah, you didn't, during the interview you can't see it because I'm like, waist up, but my leg was
Right.
going like the entire time. I'll be like, don't say anything stupid, don't freak out, don't act normal. It's like below the table. Yeah, I mean, it's a dream come true, and it's one of those moments where it's just like, oh man, like I couldn't have pictured this would be happening like 3 years ago. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it was incredible. Like I don't even know how to express it. Like it was just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, what a moment that has to be. My dream has been to just ask him what his favorite nickname is. That's it. I don't want to interview him about any of his books. That's it. I just want to do one question.
That would be a great question. I don't know what he would answer.
I think it's going to be the Sandman.
I hope so. That would be amazing.
Reddit's kind of obsessed with that, like trying to figure out what he likes to be called. So you moved from Long Island to Pennsylvania. Did you decide that you wanted to move the most boring place in America so that you could focus on your books?
No, the cheapest. That's exactly why I moved there.
Because you were not in a cheap place in Long Island.
No, I wasn't. Like all my friends who lived on Long Island with me, almost every single one of them like moved out, and they're like, dude, we can't afford rent. Like none of us are like, we're all like, we're out. I got like friends in Virginia, even with some people who moved to Chicago cheaper than Long Island. Like they were like, no, we can't do it. We can't afford it. And I went to the cheapest I could find.
For reference for everybody, he's from Huntington. He's a Long Island kid like myself. Do you think you put this tweet out there, and I kind of liked it, that book contracts should be sort of like NFL contract disputes, and we should get the media involved. Now, I'm willing to be the Stephen A. Smith of book contracts for fantasy writers.
Look, it's one of those things where you look at like how the NFL like deals with their contracts. It's just leaking stuff. Like they're like, the Detroit Lions have offered this player X many, but he turned it down. And then like the agent will put out another scoop to interest. And so I'm like, man, like it is kind of like a power move where you can use public perception of yourself and your like essentially worth to make sure you get more money. And it works vice versa. By the teams will put out the other stuff. And I'm like, man, like in publishing, it's just like my agent talks to my editor. And I'm like, all right, we want to like how much you want to do, and like you'll do this. Like it would be crazy. It would put, I say it jokingly, but it would probably put a lot more. The upper echelon of authors could use it a lot to get more money if they're like, well, they don't want to do it. I'll do it self-publishing then.
That'd be so funny. Your agent like pitches it to Glance. They're like, he did this video with Brandon Sanderson, and then they go back. Well, is he a system player? Is he a system writer? Or
exactly.
Can he hold it on his own?
Does he support the brand? Like, do we just want like a plug and play quarterback? Do we want to find a guy? Like, exactly. What are we looking for here?
One of your methods of relaxation is watching bubbles break the surface.
Yeah. Like I said, I was a swimmer. I love swimming. And there was something just so nice and serene about like being at the bottom of a pool and just like watching the bubbles float up. It was like, it's so like tranquil because you can't hear anything. And I just love it. It's like one of my like those like, those like special things where like where it's like, that's like mine. I'm like, that is mine. I love being at the bottom of the pool and just watching the bubbles float up.
I mean, it's not really practicing swimming. It's more like practicing drowning.
Pretty much.
Are you good? Like,
well, that's half of what swimming is really practicing drowning. Like some of the stuff you have to do in practice, like you'll be like, all right, take 2 breaths, then go do the whole lap, and you're just like, oh, shit. Like I don't, like I hope I can do it. And you're like, like coming up for air, that third breath. Like it's so swimming really is kind of practicing drowning. Like
I don't know, and when you put it like that, it seems like an alarming hobby.
It kind of is. Like people always make fun of the Olympics, like the lifeguards who are in front of the Olympic swimmers, and I did too. Like we used to make fun of the lifeguards who were like, we're watching our practices, being like, look, it's important you're there, it's safety, I understand, but look, if I go down, there's like 10 other swimmers who will likely get to me faster than you, but it's safety. So, but
maybe they're thinking, if well, we'll see what happens when it happens.
it was I loved it because the lifeguards who were on duty in our college, like they would be during our practices, flat out we're like, this is the easiest gig. We literally can do our homework here. The coach doesn't even care because he's like, there's so many of us around there during practice.
Yeah, what a sweet gig that is. What's your beef with Mewtwo?
I don't remember. Wait, what did I say about Mewtwo?
You got beef with him. You said that you had a bad experience with him back in the day.
Oh yeah, like you ever tried to catch Mewtwo in like Pokemon Red and Blue? He was a monster. He was like a terrible monster. Like he'd like one shot half my team like before I could even like throw one Pokeball, and he'd be like boom, dead. And like back then, like I like I was a kid, so I didn't really know how to like play Pokemon. It was like I feel like there were two camps. You either just like get the one legendary or like get a legendary bird and like spam it through the Elite Four, or have one like super leveled Pidgeotto or your starter, and that was like you blaze through it. When I was that young, then Mewtwo would like kill my first Pokemon, and I'd be like throwing Pokeballs, and I used the Master Ball on like a random Pokemon because I didn't understand what it was. So like Mewtwo, I still like do hold a grudge against. Like he was a pain in the butt to catch all those years ago.
Yeah, well, I would have beef with him too. And that is so relatable, like just being a kid and just throwing the Master Ball or something. I threw it at a Ditto because I thought Ditto could transform into any Pokemon. I was like, this is gonna be sweet.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I totally get that. I can't remember what I threw it at, but I would be surprised if it wasn't like a Pikachu or something. Because I'm like, oh, the anime, I gotta throw it at the main character of the anime. And like you toss it and you're like, oh wait, they're not that hard to catch.
Yeah, that game was confusing as a kid. I was in the camp of just train the starter to be as strong as possible and just hope he never dies.
That's pretty much what I was too. So I feel you.
Okay. How, you said that you like deadlines now and that you were disappointed about this because when you were 16, you once completed an essay while walking into the class. Yeah. How the fuck did you do that?
So I used to like, this will show how amazing of a student I was. I have to use air quotes on that. Okay. I like tried to make a game of how quickly I could complete homework and still get like a high grade on it. And that was the quickest I ever got, where it was just like, some of my classes were like, write an essay, and I'd be like, all right, I gotta do this, and I'd be literally typing it up before class, and then I hand it in, and they'd be like, all right, here's like a and I'm like, all right, that was easy. So I just, because I was a dumb kid, I kept trying to reduce the time, and this one was like, all right, you got to write a speech, and I was like, all right, I'll just write it on the bus, and then I was like, I ended up falling asleep because that's what I did. Like it was early in the morning. So then I'm walking in, I'm like, all right, I got to write this speech. And I just was literally like writing on a piece of paper. I had like a notebook, and I was like, da, 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 da. And my friends were like, Nick, what are you doing? I'm like, I got to write this speech. And like, it's doing like 3 minutes. And I walked into class, wrote the last word. And then like, I had to like dress up for it too. So I was in a full suit at that point. I walk up and they're like, oh, you ready to do your speech? I'm like, all right, let's do this. And I walked up, performed the speech, and he was like, yeah, that was amazing. And I'm like, never asked me how long that took for me to write.
That's incredible. I mean, you should pitch that to your agent. You're like, I don't miss a deadline no matter what.
Exactly. I never did. I don't miss deadlines nowadays, so we're good.
You're reliable. Speaking of wearing the suits, for anybody who's watching this on YouTube, we are wearing suits. This came together for absolutely no reason besides the fact that I think we both thought it'd be funny.
Yeah, 100%.
Are we nailing it? Is it funny? Who knows? Is there anything better than a New York bacon, egg, and cheese?
No, 100%. That's the best. That's it. That's culinary heights.
Do people talk about New York cuisine and they're like the pizza, but people don't understand that the real thing is the bacon, egg, and cheese.
Yeah, like that is 100% it. Like I don't live in New York anymore, and I miss it terribly. And every time I go back to New York, I come back with like 2 dozen New York bagels. I throw them in my freezer because I'm like, there's no comparison. Like there really isn't. And the New York bacon, egg, and cheese really is the pinnacle of like food there. I ate it all the time when I was a kid. I still want it now. I buy whatever I'm back. Like that's it. That's all. And I buy pizza too, but like there's nothing better than bacon, egg, and cheese.
It really is true. What kind of program name is WOOFing?
Oh, WOOFing. So it stands for the Worldwide Organic Organization of Farmers. And essentially what it is it's separated by countries. Okay. And they essentially place workers on farms that need help, or like they just need more people, and you you don't pay for room and board, but you don't get paid either. So it's essentially a cheap way to travel places
Right.
for free. And some places like will be like and they'll like you'll be in like local customs. Like when I did, I was in the middle of nowhere, Ireland, and I was there for I forget like 5 weeks or 3 or 4 months, a month. I forget how long. And I used it as a base of operations, and I'd go visit other cities and then work all week at a farm. The amount of stories I have from that farm are ridiculous. Like it was like its own little.
What's your best farm story?
One of my favorites I think had to be it was at the end of the day, so we worked every day. We did weird jobs every day. Some of them were like clean out this shed, some of them like all right, go pick weeds from the potato farm, like stereotypical things. You're like this feels wrong that I'm picking weeds on a potato farm in Ireland right now. But one of my favorite things, it was like at the end of the day, so we always ended around like 5-6 depending on thing, and it's dusk, so like the sun's setting. And the owner like disappeared at one point, like I want to say around like noon or something. And they were setting up the place they wanted to turn into like a wedding venue. Like it was a very rustic farms. They were trying to get flowers in, and they had people who were coming in soon to like see if they want to get married there. So the owner disappears, comes back right at the end of the day. No, with a trunk full of flowers he ripped out of the ground along some random river. And we're just like, it's me and it's everyone else who's there. We're just like, what do you want us to do with these things? And he's like, plant them right there. And I'm just like, it's for starters, I'm like, it's the end of the day, but at the same time, I'm like, where did you get these? And he's like, I went down to the thing, ripped them out. Blah, blah, blah. And we're just like, all right. So we plant all these flowers in. They look okay. And then like people come in the next day, they're like, oh, look at the flowers. In the back of my head, I'm like, they literally got ripped out of the ground. Like, and then they die within like 3 days.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they were gone. It was literally just like a permanent thing. I still don't know where this guy got these flowers. Like, he never told us, but I can't explain to you the amount of just confusion when this dude opened his trunk and it's filled with like dozens of flowers he just yanked out of the ground somewhere.
This guy killed his neighbor who he hated for so long and took the flowers. That's the only explanation.
That is probably one of the only explanations. To be fair, this dude also had a goat with me the first time I walked onto this farm. Chased me off it. It was just like a goat just sitting on the porch, and I'm like, "Am I in the right place?" I assume so. Because there's a goat, and I try to go to ring the doorbell. This goat like rips its horn, like takes out like things down there, and I'm like, what? So I like run away from it, chases me. I jump over an electrical fence meant to keep the cows away, and the goat's like, all right, I got you off my property. And I'm like, where am I supposed to go now? Like, how am I gonna get to this place? And eventually the goat goes off to eat something. I sneak into the front door, knock there, and like, oh, hi, you must be the new woofers. Or I'm just like, hi, your goat like tried to attack me, and he's like, oh, it's Chagall, he does that. And that's it. That's all the explanation you get.
Yeah, I didn't hear a sorry in there.
No.
All right, I got another one for you. Okay. If you reach the heights of superstardom, which I believe you're on the road to, do you think that kid who has a scar on his forehead from your front teeth is going to sell that piece of skin for a big payday?
I hope so. I still talk to him. I've known him since what? We've been friends since like 2nd, 3rd grade. And like he still like has like the scar on the back of his head of my teeth. And I really hope if I ever hit that point of stardom, he can just be like, yeah, look, I got proof. This is where this was his first mark on the world. These like
there you go. I like that. First mark 100%. On the world. Nailed it. 100%. When you thought you were Peter Pan and you tried to fly, that was a bad idea.
100%. Like I put a scar like right here. I don't know if you can see in the light, but I still have the scar from trying to fly. Did not work. I was dumb. I've had debatable if I've gotten smarter since, but it worked. It kind of worked. Like I was the poster child for like, don't do this don't try to replicate this. Those warnings you see, like if you start a movie, like don't try this thing again. I was one of those kids who tried to fly, and I had to probably include them because dozens of kids around the world were like, oh, we can fly. It wasn't like thankfully it wasn't off a roof, but I wasn't probably brightest because I did it onto a table filled with plates. So like Was it smarter? I guess, but how much so?
Yeah, but think how dumb everybody would have fucking felt if you actually flew.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, I guess it was worth the trade-off in my head back then, but it didn't work, sadly. And I missed the pixie dust. That was really it.
Yeah, and no comment. I mean, that had tremendous upside. All right, you're here to talk about a book. I know we got way off the rails. As always, I just want to mention to everybody, this is a spoilers podcast, so there's going to be spoilers. All right, this is my first question, and I feel like you're not going to answer another book question after this, but I got to ask it. If you don't take Moonfall seriously and a piece of Salonia hits your eye like a big pizza pie, is that amore?
Yeah, 100%. That's how people fall in love in the world. They get hit in the eye with 100%. That's the wedding ceremony. You've spoiled parts of my third book. How dare you?
Take that, Brandon Sanderson. You couldn't come up with that question. How cheeky did you feel that you wrote a main character that can't swim when you yourself are a collegiate swimmer?
I did it half because like I always hated that thing where authors would be like, "You're just like your main character." So I did that. There was one of those stupid things I did where I was like, fine, I'll just make him so he can't swim."
Pretty good way to not be you, I guess.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where like, oh, let me just separate them, because I remember I listened to an interview with Patrick Rothfuss where someone accused him of hating poets because his main character both hated poetry, and he was like, "No, I'm a poet. I was making fun of myself." Like he was like, that was the whole point. and I always stuck with me. I'm like, all right, let me give Michael something that I love and he just is terrible at. Like just see how long someone accuses me not being able to swim.
What a stupid question to ask Patrick. All right. Equally on the list of incredible questions. Would Trey have lost 600 points on his SAT because he spelled his name wrong?
100%. Yeah. 100%. Like, I actually knew a kid who forgot to sign his name on the top of the SATs, and like what they did is they actually called him and they're like, "Hey, so we think this was you. Like, do you want to confirm it?" And he didn't know what to do because he was like, "Do I want to admit I was that dumb, or do I just want to be like, it wasn't me?" And he admitted it, but he never looked at the score. He was just like, "That was a wash. We're not going to even attempt to look at it." Yeah.
What if that was the one he got like a 1600? He was like, oh, I guess it was 2400 when we were taking it.
Oh, yeah. It was 2400. Is it back to 16?
I have no idea. I'm too old. Okay. You just finished heating up a bowl of delicious, heart healthy Campbell's chunky chicken noodle soup.
Okay.
And you can't eat it because you don't have a spoon. Can you now relate to Domit throwing a servant out the window for stealing a spoon?
I mean, I guess so. Like, you'd hope like he would have more spoons, but knowing Dome, like he probably would just have like one spoon that was his favorite, and he'd just be really pissed that someone stole it from him. So you throw the person out of the room. Like it's reasonable in a way. Like if someone stole your favorite hat, would you not like be pissed at them? He just had the money, whatever he wanted, since he was crazy.
But, I mean, I'm a guy who needs a hat.
You see my hair? I'm close to getting a pompadour right now. I'm wearing a hat too right now.
Dude, that flow is sweet.
The haircut, but I really am just like can't go out, or it's like goes all the way up.
I don't know if you spike that thing up like Gerald, you have a sick fro.
Ooh, I haven't done that. Maybe I'll have to try that out, but I don't. I think probably could get it work. We'll
book
see.
three author photo ideas.
100%.
I mean, it's not like Domey was a heroin addict, so he probably had more spoons than just one.
Yeah, exactly.
How addicted to your Blackberry were you in 2007 to cause you to make Blackberries street slang for drugs?
I thought it was cool. So the origin of Blackberries was I was watching too much and reading too much about how like drug stuff worked. So I was like reading, and I was in a science class where they're kind of like, this crystallizes. So I was like, and they were showing like if you watch like how drugs are essentially made, and this is going to be really weird because I know this stuff, but like some of the things like it's involved in the crystallized process. So I was thinking, well, you probably if you get them lumpy and misshapen, they would turn into like berry form if they when they crystallize. And like, well, blackberries makes kind of sense because it would be they're blackish shapen fruits that people put in their mouths and like stick right here. So like it works out.
I really thought a missed opportunity there was to create a leprechaun type character that goes, I'm a little lad that loves berries and cream. But
you
that's
know
that.
that was in the director's cut. It didn't make it.
Speaking of the director's cut, can we please release some of the letters that Michael nailed to the door like Martin Luther with the fucking on the church?
I think I forget if I wrote any of them. I think I wrote one of them because I was like, hey, what would he write in these letters? And it was just like, imagine like the whiniest kid being like, you should do this instead. It's like some like 11-year-old kid being like, bring back Oreos that were like this color or like this flavor. And that's kind of what these letters were. So they got more mature as he grew older, but to a certain extent, you run out of things to write and nail to a door after a while, and they just become kind of more absurd the older he got. So
I just was laughing thinking about this. All right, I thought I had the worst question out there already, but I'm going to say this. Do you think Dark needs to lighten up a little?
Yes, probably, but it's not in his name and his personality, so he can't.
All right, what the hell can you do with a wood fabrication?
Oh, yeah, they don't show up in the first book. I don't even remember now.
Yeah, it does. I only read the first one.
Okay, so how those things work is they essentially turn their body into like wood. So it's a kind of a trade-off where they would get so they'd be like the limbs of a tree where limbs will get like longer and longer, get more things. That's what their bodies would do. So they wouldn't become like stretchy like rubber, but they become flexible and thinner, and they'd be able to move through things, in contrast to steel fabricators who just turn into like essentially walking hunks of metal.
Right. I'd prefer that, just if I had the option.
I would too, but
instead of becoming a fucking end.
Yeah, pretty
much. You're telling me, Jamal, he never read even the first page of the book? What if that had the answer that was like, I know this is how I got framed? He just never read it.
He never read it. Like just never did. Like he yeah, just never did.
All right. Oh, this is the worst question. Then I promise they get better. If the entire kingdom is filled with liars, how profitable is it to be a pants maker?
So fun fact. There was a point where we were debating titles for the book, and I really tried to make it so "Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire" was the cover title, and they just instantly shot it down. But a killing, essentially. Like they would always make so much money, especially with like people to like go around lighting things on fire for them. Hey, that's the wealthiest person. That's actually Domain's side business. He's so, and no one ever calls him out on it.
I thought that would be the best business, or being a tattoo artist, because let me tell you, you don't need any skill because no one has any good tattoos. Exactly. Your option is ugly bone, traitor, a bunch of fucking names of people that you chop their heads off, or some pointless ass memories.
Yeah, that's really what those tattooists in the city do. Is like it's a lot of those like really simple designs. They're not like intricate at all. They're not like the Yakuza tattoos with like a full dragon on their back. Like it's literally just like, let me write this name down. Like they make a killing for what their profit margin is. Like, all right, let me just do like 20 names today and I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, you could really hammer those fucking things out. Yeah. All right. I think it's time I ask the one serious question of this podcast. One of the goals of this podcast, besides, trying to get the author to hang up the phone call on me, is to kind of break the stereotypical traditional mold of what fantasy is perceived at, kind of this male-centric, man slays the dragon, sleeps with the women, doesn't need anybody's help. The women are all helpless and just totally in love. and need everybody to be saved. And this is read by neckbeards in their mom's basement playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is a fun game. But and this kind of like misogynistic backwards view. What about your books breaks that traditional mold and shows that fantasy not only is no longer like that, but also has the general appeal?
So Michael's the least confident character probably in the entire book. This was probably where to start. But it's like you look at the female characters in the book and they're all just like, yeah, we can do all these things. And there's Michael who kind of like stumbles in one general direction to the other until he figures out how to like do things. So to get and more serious answer, like Michael, I think is kind of a very, very atypical anti-hero. He is not a good person. He really is not a good person. And he does not the stereotypical things. And a lot of the book is kind of like, my favorite thing about the King of Liars is that all of the lies that are created throughout the book, King Killer, Dragon Slayer, all these things he's titled, are just various like things he's twisted and manipulated the public into believing. And it's very that atypical, like this dude is not the guy you want to call. Like this is not like Ned Stark, who like the heroic paragon of valor or anything, or Kaladin in Stormlight Archives. This is the dude who you're like, oh man, I really don't know what to do. And you end up calling Michael Kingman. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna come, but I might end up burning down a city block in the meantime. And you're just like, oh, okay. Then you hang up. No, but it's one of those things like, and in terms of female characters, like my female characters are very stronger than my male characters, almost entirely. And it's something like I got to like there's the Royal Guard are all women. They're like, and they're very adept at fighting. And the princess, who doesn't really appear in book one, is my favorite character. So I get to spend a lot of time like using her in the background. It's one of those things like you read enough fantasy and you see kind of these like very stereotypical things. Like my biggest pet peeve in fantasy kind of is the stereotypical male character who like is an embodiment of rage, or like all he wants is vengeance and revenge is all that matters. And you're like, that's not how things work. Like you can try to do that, but like you destroy yourself. And this is kind of like how my take of like, oh, this guy does actually want to do anything to get what he thinks is the truth. Like, well, how would that actually realistically happen? And then Michael was created, who is Michael. So I don't know how to answer that question without saying it's Michael.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of a guy who just keeps trying to hammer the same idea home, why does he keep going back to his keep? Nothing happens good there.
It's kind of like, it's almost like one of the things I really like. So this is more of a broader answer, but like one of the things, like it shouldn't surprise you, the magic system and like memory loss is kind of vaguely reminiscent of dementia and things. So one of the things I was looking up when I did a lot of research into memory loss and things is that people who in terms have these issues with memory almost retread same paths, where their body will take them places where they really don't, like they're like, oh, I don't want it, like, oh, this is where I remember. So Michael does that a bunch in the first book, where he goes back and replaces things over and over again because that's where his body thinks he needs to go, despite him not being able to remember why. So that's why he goes to Kingman Keep all the time, and every time he goes there, terrible things happen, but he gets more reminded like on the path again. And why like the ending of the book is all takes place in the castle, where all the the events from 10 years ago happen, and that's what triggers Michael's memories back into place.
That was a very smart answer to a dumb question. Very much appreciate it. I mean, you talk about the princess, but she does kind of make an appearance. Should Michael be canceled for being a little pervert and peeping around the corner?
Look, yes, 90% of the time Michael would get canceled in a moment. She does know it's him, so she kind of allows it. So it's a weird gray line where like he should like not, if he's being a perv, like he totally is, but she kind of is like, all right, it's Michael. It's like she knows it's him, so she's like, all right, whatever, I'm just gonna walk away now. So it's like he probably would have like, but he didn't. It's a weird situation, but probably yeah.
No, I'm kidding. And that is a joke, everybody. But also that scene takes on a whole new meaning if you think about it through that light. Then all of a sudden it's risque.
Yeah, a lot of the princess scenes in particular, she shows up like I knew the exact number at 1.4 or 5 times in the first book. And every one of her scenes, once you know it's her, takes on new light. And it frames things about Michael's past and their relationship differently.
Mystery. Simon Anderson, the self-proclaimed king of stories. If you're gonna self-proclaim something, that's a pretty good one to go with.
I thought so. I love Simon's character, and he's an asshole. He's 100% an asshole. But he's my favorite character because he's almost like the worst stereotypical things about writers. And I just bundled it all together where it's like I've given him like egotism of like a best, like a mega bestseller who will never be topped. And I gave him like the things like he's shaping history. He has a line where he's like, well, I'm telling your story, Michael. Like I'm doing it. You're just another pawn in my part, like in my story. And I love him because he's just unapologetic about everything he does, and he doesn't try to excuse it. And I love it. I get to do all like the fun like meta stuff with like writing and commentary around his character, and he's always fun to write.
I mean, he's hysterical.
And he also is the only one who like adamantly tries to hurt Michael. He's like, yeah, I wrote like this entire thesis about why your family sucks. Come at me. Like, and Michael's like, fuck you. Like, stop it. And he's like, no, am I wrong? And Michael doesn't respond.
But just like flirting in 5th grade when you're mean to someone because you try to get them to love you, it does work because he does come with the full tale.
He does. And Michael buys into it all the time. Like, Simon has no leverage on him, and he's just like, all right, let me ask a bunch of questions to you, and he gets the answers he wants. Like, it's hilarious. He's just very good. Like, he's probably one of the more manipulative characters in the whole series, but he doesn't usually come across that way because he's doing in terms of story and trying to dig history, where he's like he's shaping history and like all the things to what he wants it to be. He's the one of the most not worst characters, but he is so one-sided in that he knows exactly what he's doing and no one calls him on it.
It's fucking sweet, man. He really does. He really nails it. One of the things with this podcast is it's #1 podcast for dick jokes and fantasy books. That's a title that maybe not many podcasts want, but I want it. So you've got one good one in there. Can I read it to you?
100%.
He was pissed and threatened to cut off my cock and feed it to my friends while I watched. Obviously, we didn't reach an honest agreement. That's just funny.
Exactly, because like I don't know if like you've ever been on the receiving end of someone being like, oh, I'm gonna cut off your cock, or like insult like that, and they always say it's more threatening than it is. You're like, all right, like, do you really want to do that? Like, are you sure? Like that is the threat you want to come out with? And I tried to take the absurdity of that kind of threat and put it into the book of like this very strong mercenary being like, I'm gonna do this, and the guys are like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, do it. Seems a little excessive. Speaking of excessive, King Isaac, a little much at the end over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, King Isaac is a fun character, and you know he needs a really bad ending, so he's getting
yeah, kind of like. He's kind of like you watching the bubbles break the surface, except he goes through with it. He stays under the water.
Yeah, he does. he's like, all right, you know, I'm out, guys. See ya. And he just like his one action like destroys the rest of like anything. Like if there's any chance of Michael being redeemed, it's just gone in that moment. Like it's just like whoops.
Yeah, awesome. One of the things I also do on this show is I pitch novella ideas. Okay. As you could expect from these questions, it's an excellent one. So this novella idea is called The Journals of the Archmage, the show.
Okay.
And it's a weekly show about our favorite Archmage. And we're going to find out what's going on this week. Is he, what color assistant hid his sneakers? Where's his robe? What is the point of humanity? And this is based on a true story and updated weekly. And every week we just get a new play.
Exactly. It would be perfect. It would be wonderful because he would have like really serious like drama episodes. And then you just literally, as you said, would have an episode where he's like can't find his clothes. Like it'd be 30 minutes of him just either deciding to walk around butt naked or be like, all right, you have to use something around me. Like it would be hilarious. The talent and writing things you get done with it would be awesome.
the hijinks, just think about it. It's like, where's my socks? Has everything I've done for humanity been a waste of time because now there's guns? Who knows?
Who's my assistant this week? Is it this color or this color? Do they just like all show up one episode where it's every single one of them returns and like they're just trying to mess with him only to all get kicked out? It'd be great.
Oh man, I'm glad you're on board. So get working on that. I know you got something that you can't talk about that you're working on, and I believe it's this. While some might think it's awful, it is kind of sweet to be able to give yourself alcohol poisoning every night and wake up like nothing happened.
Yeah, he doesn't really have to care about his limits. He just is like, all right, I'm gonna drink this entire, handle all by myself, and I'll be great tomorrow morning. Like he's just like, I'm back to normal. He can go rage every single night and never ever face consequences for his actions.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet, dude. He can really get after it.
You're like, oh, I'm gonna drink. He's gonna be like, I'll drink you under the table. And he will drink the entire bar under the table.
At some point, I know he was big on this whole shrine thing. At any point, did he think, man, that was actually a pretty good prank?
Probably at one point he was, probably after, once he figured out, he was like, huh, that was actually a decent move by like Michael. He probably had that singular moment where he was like, all right, respect. And then he was like, no, all right, now fuck you. Like he's back
right. This was the only thing I cared about in life.
Exactly. All right, you destroyed my all my happiness. I guess I'll give you credit, but now I hate you again.
How awesome is Red's gig? She's like MF Doom or Daft Punk.
Yeah, 100%. Like all she does is sing. What great is that thing? And like she comes in, sings one song, and then immediately leaves. Like, and she gets paid high billing. She gets like all her staff with her. Like, why would that not be the best gig in the whole like city? Like it's great.
I'm assuming we'd eventually find out her identity.
Yes.
And I think it was similar to the boobies in the castle.
Like that's a great line of thought. Like you're not far off.
Can a gun be a one of a kind if it has a twin?
I think so. Like that's kind of the thing. I don't know. Like it kind of is. I would say so. Like think you have like a twin in real life, you're still both one of a kind.
Right.
It works, right?
I'll give it to you. Why did Angelo bother to be such a good dad? He like put so much work into it.
You want the serious answer or the funny answer?
The funny one first.
Okay, the funny answer is he was just like, all right, I might as well raise these kids well. Like you never know what will happen to them. The serious answer is he actually thought it perfectly, because he's like, if I raise these kids, they're never going to think it was me. Like that, like you always have to assume like their revenge, like in these kinds of situations, like, oh, I killed this person who's very influential, I'm responsible for their death, their kids may come after me at some point, how do I just prevent that from happening? And he's like, I'll raise them, because at some point, even if it takes like decades or 2 decades, they're still going to have some kind of familial love towards them for raising them. So all he had to do was kind of show the bare minimum of being like a good dad, and they would have never suspected him. Then literally he would have gotten away with it. It's the perfect plan. And then he got caught barely. It was all because of a ring. So yeah, it was perfect. I like that would be the ultimate plan. Like, all right, let me raise my kid, the kid let me raise the kid of the person I just killed. They'll never come after me.
Right. If he wasn't addicted to the drip, he would have never got caught.
Exactly. It's a real warning for everyone not to buy too many shoes. It's the drip that really will be the end of us.
All right. I think that I've got a couple more. Michael cut a little close with the lock picking thing.
Yeah. He he's much better pickpocket than he is lock picker, and he really should just stay to like picking pockets.
Right. It's very important that you stay in your lane.
Exactly.
Okay, my last question. How many people do you think felt guilty for laughing at the first blind joke?
I don't know, and I'll never know. I feel like no one will ever admit that to me, because
I laughed. I laughed. It was funny.
Thank you. I thought I did my job well there, because it comes out of nowhere. You're like, oh shit.
I think that's the exact reaction I had. I think I went, "Oh shit," and the person in the room was like, "What are you doing? You're reading a book?" Like, I was like, "You don't get it."
Exactly. It's perfect. It's like if you either like acknowledge it or you're just like, nope, didn't happen. I'm not gonna laugh. I'm not laughing. I swear I'm not laughing. I refuse to.
I think that's everything I got. Where can people find you?
You can find me at nickmartell.com or Mac Martell on Twitter, or I think I'm Nick Martell official on Instagram, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet, that Instagram thing you had where you posted just like the kind of collage picture. I like that.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like Glance really hooked me up with that. They like sent all the things, and I was like, all right, I gotta put this up. Like it's gonna be like, it literally is 9 photos, but it looks so good when you're scrolling through it. If they line up right. Every so often they don't line up right, but when they do, they look great.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that, but it does look pretty sweet.
Every like 3 pictures, it looks amazing. And that's usually when I try to stop posting on Instagram, when they're lined up perfectly. I got to plan out like, all right, this is when I can post a picture. Else it ruins the entire thing. It's like the head's over here and like the body's this way. So
who said being an author is easy? Thank you so much for taking the time out. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we had some fun. Also, I'm sweating my ass off in this tuxedo jacket.
Like the windows open, the sun's beating down on me. I'm like, oof.
This was a terrible idea, but I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
That was a super fun interview. Like one of my favorites that I've done so far. His book, I'm not even kidding. It was incredible. One of my favorite reads this year. Sounds like I'm heaping a ton of praise on him. And if you're wondering why, once you read the book, you'll be like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Let's do Books on the Horizon, because I've got a banger of an October coming up. Next week is The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso. Her new book is coming out on October 12th, so this interview should be out right around when the first book's there. It's a great recap. Like, these interviews, you know, they have just enough information that I feel like they could serve as a recap if you're going into the second book. And by that I mean, like, if you want to know the most not relevant plot points to a book, it's perfect. After that is Godblind by Anna Stevens. That's a fun interview. If you want to know more about The Hammer. After that is probably going to be Under the Pendulum Sun by Jeanette Ung, and I'll have more details on that next week. And then Children by Bjorn Larson. I got to learn how to say that name, because let me tell you, that's a wild boy, and I can't wait to get the chance to talk to him. So thank you, everybody who's rocking with me. Keep on reading or something. Peace.